Okay, greetings and welcome to the Galley's Pan-African Community News Update. Today's date is the 26th of May, 2024. I'm brother Dr. Toyin Agbetu, and I'm in the studio with Sister Oleander. Sister Oleander, can you hear me okay?
Sure, I can hear you very well.
Excellent.
Greetings to everybody and welcome.
Thank you. And we're going to be covering, doing a review essentially of last fortnight's community-related news. If you are watching live, you are welcome to interact with us through Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. As ever, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share if you find this broadcast useful. Sister Oleander, as you know, is actually on the system, so please, if you want to just make us know that you can hear us okay, that you can see us okay, please send a message. That's always helpful for us. But as I know today is a very jam-packed program, I'm going to move swiftly on and start, as we always do, with libations. So that's to those who have recently passed and notable anniversaries. And so the first libation is to our now ancestor, William T. Strickland. Now, William, or Bill, as he was known to his friends, joined the ancestors at the age of 87 on April the 10th. He was a emeritus professor in the W. Du Bois Department of African American Studies. He was an inclusive scholar, and he taught political science for 40 years, and he served as a director of W. Du Bois Papers, which is kind of like the archive of all his documents. Now, that's how many people know him recently, but he has been active had been active for more than 60 years. And he dedicated his life to advancing civil rights, human rights, Pan-Africanism, and political power for communities throughout the African diaspora. He was a prolific speaker and writer. He shared incisive critiques of American racism, capitalism, imperialism, and he did so in many publications. One of the things that some of you will know, or may be aware of, that he was actually a close friend of Malcolm X, or Malik El Hajj, and they worked together on rent strikes, school boycotts, campaigns against police brutality, and broader struggles for African liberation. When Malcolm formed the Organization of African American Unity in 1964, our elder Strickland was a founding member as a student representative. His passing will be greatly missed, and we can only hope the ancestors are pleased with his amazing work. Asher. The next anniversary is to, many of you will probably be very familiar with this because it's been covered on most mainstream media outside the UK, that is. On the UK, there's not been a single story. I haven't seen on any of the news channels yet. But this is a remembrance to George Floyd, who joined the ancestors a few years ago on the 25th of May, 2020, after Derek Chauvin murdered him. Now, across Minneapolis, there have been events in churches, mosques, synagogues gathered with mornings of prayers to commemorate him. There's been a weekend of events marking the fact that George Floyd was murdered by the Minneapolis police. And the local NAACP leader, who is based in Minneapolis, is helping to lead several events with her non-profit company called Win Back. And she offered a prayer at the event saying, "We pray for the family of George Floyd that is still mourning to this day. Not a figure, but a person. Not a figure, but a family member. We pray for a movement, not a moment." And these words really encapsulate how many of us are feeling, and many indeed felt after we heard a lot of people express solidarity with African communities across the world, especially those in the Americas. And now slowly but surely we're seeing those concerns, those anti-racist allies disappearing into the shadows. So George Floyd, we remember. Now, the next libation is not to an individual, but it's actually to an organization that is no longer with us, not in its original guise at least. And we remember the founding of the Organization of African Unity. Now, this body was set up in the 25th of May, 1963 in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. There were 32 African states that had at that time achieved independence, or what they call independence, from European colonial powers, and agreed to establish the Organization of African Unity to deal with the problem, the scourge of colonialism. Now, I say it's no longer in existence because now we have what's called the African Union, which is a reformation of this original groundbreaking organization. And that came into force in 2002, with a lot of work done by Gaddafi at the time, who was president of Libya, who was pushing for a change in the structure of the organization. There was a lot of compromises that took place with the Organization of African Unity. It grew over its time from 32 to 53 members. And while it still remembered its mission to fight against colonialism and also apartheid in Tanzania, there were still conflicts that took place because there was several kind of like key principles that kept the membership in place and intact. And one was non-interference with the activities of another member state. And this actually did cause problems. But it's very important to remember the Organization of African Unity, because on its passing, that's when we were gifted with African Liberation Day, which in fact I did a recent debate with our brother Glenroy Watson about the origins and the transformation of African Liberation Day, because many people now know that the African Union has rebranded African Liberation Day into Africa Day. And African Day is a party of sorts, kind of like the same way that Black History Month has lost the African History Month and the history focus has become African Entertainment Month. So Africa Day, I'll talk about that later, is kind of the legacy. But initially it was African Liberation Day, which was yesterday. But I want to leave it there because the Organization of African Unity was an amazing initiative, and hence Malcolm X joined it in solidarity with the Organization of African American Unity. I'll leave it there. And the final libation is directly linked to the past story, and this is to our brother Tajuddin Abdul Rahim, or Taj to his friends. Now, Taj passed away in a fatal car crash on African Liberation Day. He was a true Pan-Africanist as a friend, and his legendary postcards were reproduced by several African newspapers and on the internet by the Pambazuka News Network. He inspired millions of people around the world, including myself. Actually, you can buy a book which has a collection of his most famous postcards. But that wasn't all he did. He co-founded several radical think tanks, as they call them, and African organizations such as Justice Africa and the African Research Information Bureau, where he edited its journal, African World Review. Now, he was a giant of scholar activists. He had a huge international status, which gave him access to African leaders. But because he pushed back and he was really for grassroots communities, what happened, he was born in Nigeria, and when he went to Nigeria and he campaigned against the generals who seized power and ruled and robbed the country for most of his life, he was always under threat. And in 2002, he was actually arrested as he was trying to return to London, and had his passport confiscated. So he put his life on the line for his ideas and his values. Now, he worked for the United Nations on their Millennium Development Goal, and that's what he was doing when he joined the ancestors in that fatal crash on African Liberation Day. But one legacy, alongside all the beautiful work he did, the relationships that he formed, and his children and his wife, was his message, which he signed everything with. And it was, don't agonize, organize. It was a very powerful message, and that really is a fitting way to remember. You can see some of his interviews on the BBC website as well, when he challenges these clowns who would put down Pan-Africanism. That's it for the Remember the Libation section. You are watching. It's Oleander. You're there.
Yes, so we've got a few messages. We have one from, first, we have one from FPCom saying hi, greetings and blessings.
Greetings and blessings to you too, sister.
And we have one from N saying grand rising, beautiful fellow Africans, with lots of lovely emojis there.
Love and light. Grand rising
Love
to you
and
too
light.
as well.
And this one is quite interesting as well from FBComs. Just a thought. Do you ever interview people? I would love to see an interview between yourself and Mia Motley. It was just a thought that made me smile.
Oh, that's a wonderful thought. It's a good idea, actually. And that is actually the long-term plan of the program. We do have the technology. We can have guests in. We were playing with the idea of actually having someone, like who's watching, like yourself, join the community, maybe in a part of the program. But the key thing is then would have to limit the time. Or a program that started off between 60 to 90 minutes and has now gone to 2 hours would end up being like 3 or 4 hours, which is unsustainable. But the idea of having interviews, live interviews, and having guest people come in and present sections of the program is definitely something we can do, and we can facilitate it quite easily. That's not a challenge. It's just having a production team to make that work. So thank you for sharing that idea, and we'll see what we can do. Okay, let me move to the next slide because we're going to go to the next section. You are watching Legali's Pan-African Community News Update. If you're watching live, you are welcome to interact with us through Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, as some of our fellow comrades and family have already just done. Please don't forget to subscribe, though. You can like and share this as well. I always say to share. That's really the most important thing. If you find the broadcast useful, each one, teach one. But the next section, as you can see, is called UK News. And we're just going to look at the general domestic news affecting our community. I actually just crossed my mind. I haven't actually put anything in the news about the general election that's taking place in 6 weeks' time. But perhaps it will come up in some of the things that we discuss. So, looking at the general news, the first story is a bit of a tragic one, actually. It's the father of our sister, Johanita Jogbe. Now, she was murdered in a random attack by a man named Mohammed Nur. He had made a makeshift blade out of scissors and broken glass, and he walked around and was basically stabbing people. I think he'd stabbed 3 or 4 people before he killed our sister. Now, he has been caught and sentenced to life in prison, and he's supposed to serve a minimum of 32 years, but that doesn't help our sister, doesn't help our family. Her father has made the comment that she was taken from us so violently, and it's left a massive hole in their lives and in their hearts. It just wasn't her time to go. It's a horrific story, and it's a reminder of the dangers that still exist out there. Mohammed Nur, he was from our community as well. I have no idea why he did this, and he was literally attacking people at random. So it does make you think that there's an issue with mental health and well-being, but we have no idea. So we remember our sister. We spoke about this before. The next story, unfortunately, is another tragic one, and this is about our young prince, the 12-year-old Renoy Ellis. And again, we have a testimony from his brother who said that he was amazing and had so much potential. And, the brother, who you can see in the image, Jason Campbell, is referring to, his brother who, I can't even believe I'm going to say this, but he fell from an upper floor flat in South London. He was in Kennington, in the house, in the property. It was the afternoon, around 4:30. And he fell. And now the police have said there's nothing to indicate that the incident was suspicious at the time, but there is an ongoing investigation. I have heard and seen reports indicating that there was a complaint about the safety of the balcony or the windows or something like that. But I'm not sure, if that's something to be looking into, how much that's related to what this is. It's just a tragedy that a 12-year-old would lose his life in such a horrific way. And this comes literally days, 5 days actually. I think, was it 5 days? Around 5 days after the 5-year-old Prince Alim Ahmed died in similar circumstances in East London, and he fell through a kitchen window of a 15th story flat in Plaistow. So this is, I don't like to draw parallels, this coincidence that's happening, but it's horrific. I don't know what the situation is with the investigation is in through there, and we can only hope that it isn't something to do with health and safety, that it isn't a fact to do with housing associations or councils not providing adequate security on windows. But I don't know, and I shouldn't really speculate on these kind of things. But we do remember the tragic story. The next story, again, this is just news update. This is again Sheriff Lowell. You can see his image. He's 29 years old. He was rushed to hospital after collapsing in his first professional debut, boxing debut. He was pronounced dead, unfortunately, and there's been loads of tributes to him on social media. Now, there's not much information on what happened, whether it's a heart attack. It looks like that's what it was. It was some kind of cardio problem. We don't know. It was his first, his debut. It's 29 is nothing. Again, these are ridiculous ages. There's been many tributes pouring in. You might see on his T-shirt that he was a member of the St. Pancras Boxing Club, which he regards to as an extended family. It's a tragedy, and all I can say is we feel, as we have for the last 2 young men, for his family and friends. And I'm going to keep going on with some of the horrendous news. And thankfully, in this particular case, our elder is still with us, even though he was assaulted and injured. And you may recognize the face, Elder Minka Adolfo, who let me stop that, who is an activist and a founder of the United Friends, USCC, United Friends and Family campaign, which looks into deaths in police custody. Now, he was racially abused and violently assaulted by around 6 to 7 Southeast Asian men affiliated with the Noor Cash and Curry store inside the Brixton village in London. Now, he been out there, from what I can gather, explaining to people who are in the area that this place was under community boycott because they had, and it was accused, racially assaulted or racially abused an African woman in the past. When they heard him talking about this, they called him the N-word and stomped him to the ground. He, on that day, from what I found out, he went to hospital. He had injuries. But fortunately, he seems to be okay. But of course, he's very shaken up. He's quite upset that nobody intervened when he was being assaulted. The police came, but no one helped him while this was taking place. Our local activists are calling for a boycott of this particular business. That's the Noor Cash and Curry in Brixton village. So we send him our love and hope that he has recovered well, and hope he takes it easy, because I heard from friends that he's still back out there the following day, kind of like doing community work. He's a stalwart. He's one of our, when I say elder, I mean he's one of our warriors out there, still campaigning, still raising issues related to our community. But we want him to also take care. Sister Oleander.
Yes, so we've got a couple of messages. I just thought, because one of them is about this particular issue. So, Amani Na Baraka, peace to all of my African people, Black people globally. Happy African Day weekend from Anthony McCall.
Thank you. Same to you.
Yeah. And then from Del Smith, brother Oh, Toyin, should be Toyin. I saw this via WhatsApp. I hope my fellow brothers and sisters in Brixton stop buying from the wicked racists. They all have respect for our pound notes.
I
Yeah,
share
they
to that.
only have respect for our pound notes, for real.
No,
Yeah,
completely true. You know, if a store can actually assort an elder, a group of them, and still expect to take money from our community, then something's gone wrong. So I hope that there's a boycott. I hope there's a police investigation. I think the police were called. I hope there is an investigation into this, and they recognise that it was a hate crime because they did use the
yeah,
N word when they stomped him to the ground. And you're right. A lot of these businesses only have respect for our pound, and we have to recognise the power we have in actually saying no. You can't get away with this kind of thing. But that's to do with political education, and that's one of the challenges that we collectively have. Making sure
yeah,
that we understand how to empower ourselves through things like economic boycotts. But give thanks
yeah.
and for the comment.
But I mean, I think that our people are quite complacent when it comes to standing up to shops that sell the things that we use, um, and we just kind of turn a blind eye almost because we want the products. And I
Yep.
think, if you try a little bit harder, you will actually find those products being sold by our people. Certainly in Brixton, I know there's a couple of shops there at least that our people sell things that we use, whether it be food or hair products. So, we need to, as you say, the political education needs to really get around a little bit.
Well, there's certainly no need to put money into the bank accounts of any retail store that is actually calling our elders using the N word and beating them to
Mm,
the ground so that they had to go to hospital because of risk of fractures to their brain. I think he had a
mm.
CT scan.
Yeah.
So I mean, but you're right. One of the things that does tend to happen because many of us, not all of us, but many of us are challenged when it comes financially. We tend
Mm,
to shop where things are cheap. Let's just be honest about that. But there are so many alternative stores that many entrepreneurs are setting up, and even if they are a tiny bit more expensive, and that's not always the case, let's be clear about that. Even if they are tiny
mm-hmm.
bit expensive, or they're not a little bit further to go, it's actually worth it. It's actually worth supporting them if we don't want to be in a situation where we, our elders, our children, what I mean, are all being disrespected, and we're paying for that disrespect. That's an outrageous situation to be in. But let me move on to the next story.
Yeah. Okay.
Unfortunately, this is another tragic story. This is the news section, and I'd hope that talking about news, it wouldn't all be linked to violence and death. But unfortunately, the 16-year-old son, Kamari Johnson, was fatally stabbed yesterday afternoon. We just found this out. The police say they have arrested a 17-year-old boy on suspicion of murder. We don't know anything more than that, but our thoughts are with him, his family, and his friends. I don't know what to say about this. We don't know any details, but the loss of life at this such young age. So this is we just covered two stories where children have fallen out of windows to their death, and now we've got another situation where we're seeing teens killing each other. It's a horrendous situation, and yeah, I'm going to move on. Like I said, our thoughts are with his family and friends. Next story. It's not a great news story, but it is one to do with a family, an African family, and in this particular case, it's about a mother of two whose life has been turned upside down after she has been relocated from London to Berkshire. Now, she was evicted from a previous accommodation in Harlesden, but the only council house that she was offered was in Slough, where she has no family or friends. And so as a result, her children face a 4-hour journey to and from school. I can't even stress. I think she said something like they leave at 5 o'clock in the morning. So a 4-hour journey to and from school every single day. Now, Redbridge Council, which is the council, the local authority that manages the flat in Slough, said it was, grappling with a severe housing crisis, and that our sister's case was now being reviewed. I don't know if it would have been reviewed if there wasn't any focus or any attention on it, But it's an outrageous situation, and this is something we don't hear about. I don't know the ins and outs of this story. I'm not going to say that this is another story about gentrification, even though possibly it could be. I don't know. But to relocate someone out of an area where they have no connections, no family, no friends, no support, and from what I gather, she's actually has an illness which makes it very difficult for her to work. It's it's a disgusting situation to be. The next story, unfortunately, is well, what can I say? We don't have much information on this one again. But it's about the bodies of 2 women who were found and were undiscovered for some time inside a house in Nottingham. Now, they're believed to be a mother and her daughter. We know this because of some of the reports coming from local news outlets and the notes that have been left outside by neighbours. Residents in the area said they hadn't seen the pair for months, and they thought that the younger woman could have had Down syndrome. So, we're still trying to piece together the story. From what we can tell is that they may have escaped from a violent husband in Italy. So it looks like they were based there. They moved to France. That wasn't safe enough, and so they came to London. So we're talking about potentially asylum seekers moving to the UK for a safe life, and we don't know why, but they've been, they were found dead, and they'd been in that condition for some time. So when we find out more information, we'll share it with you. It's an awful, awful tragedy. I don't know what to say. Like I said, there's not much information on that one. Sister Oleander.
Yeah, so we've got 2 comments. First one is from Anthony saying gentrification is becoming widespread in America.
It's becoming widespread
in America.
In America, oh yes. Unfortunately, this is wherever in Western societies where there is a minority ethnic community, then gentrification, where people are pushed out, and shunted into the suburbs, unfortunately, is a feature of it.
Yeah. And we have a comment from FP Comms. I know this is a strange thing to mention, but can we also encourage and remind our young people to ask for their receipt when making purchases? I'm seeing a trend of stopping them when they leave the store. This is another excuse for retailers to pick on them.
That's an excellent piece of advice, actually. I hadn't even thought, but that's an excellent piece of advice. Often when young people are stopped and searched and they've done nothing wrong, if they have any items on them, etc., then they're often under suspicion of having stolen them. So you're right. Just the idea of actually calling for a receipt is important. Also, when they're stopped and searched, as one of the recommendations from the McPherson report, the police are supposed to get them receipts. And so perhaps this is something that we as elders have failed to do. We haven't got them into a habit of storing receipts. Often, sometimes we do things because we want to stay undercover. We don't want formality. But in these situations right now, we have to always keep receipts. We do it in social media terms. If someone gives us an insult, someone's used racism, we're starting to get to a situation where we start recording and taking screenshots of comments that are actually harmful and Afrophobic. But you're right, just purchase in shops. I hadn't even thought about that. Thanks for that, my sister. That's a very good piece of advice. And that's something that, it's us, it's the elder generation that must communicate to our young people to start doing. It's not to create tax records or anything like that. It's just for their own safety, so they can prove these things, which is disgusting that we should even think like that. But yeah, I like that. The next story, I'm not going to go through the whole case again. We spoke about this one. This was it was a horrific case, and I remember it haunted me. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. This is you may remember Christina Robinson, who murdered Delania Robinson, her son. She has received a lifetime sentence, minimum term of 25 years. Her son was 3 years of age. They lived in County Durham. just as a quick summary, if you're new to the program, she was a member of the Black Hebrew Israelite religion. She admitted to beating her 3-year-old son with a bamboo cane, but claimed she was following a Bible scripture which advised the use of the rod for the correction of our children. She then later caused a fatal brain injury to him in November 2022, while she was the only adult in the house, and she waited over 20 minutes before she dialed 999. He obviously passed away. There are other things like she deliberately immersed him in boiling water, causing several burns, leaving him in agony, and she didn't seek medical help because she knew that there'll be safeguarding concerns if a health worker saw him. She has been jailed. It doesn't bring our son back, but I just thought we had to follow up on this story. And Dual and I, Robinson, our thoughts are with you. I can't even believe a mother would do that. Sister Oleander.
Yeah, so ends just repeating what you said at the beginning, which is she scalded him in a bath of hot water, and adds that he died with over 60 injuries.
Yeah, it was a horrific case. We often,
as a mother, I don't know how could you even think that way? But anyway, I know we've got a lot to get through, so I
hear that. It's something as a community we have to think about when we perpetuate this idea that we must beat our children, and and this is the right way to chastise them, and it's said so in the Bible, it says so in the Quran, or whatever rationale that we use, and we have to challenge that kind of thinking. There are other ways to discipline our children which doesn't involve burning them, beating them, and leaving them to die. Let's move on. Okay, let's go to the next section. That's supposed to be just the news section. It's not normally so grim. It's normally just interesting stories, but that's where we are right now. We only cover the news that's come up over the last couple of weeks. But you are watching the Galley's Pan-African Community News Update. And as always, you're welcome to interact with us if you're watching live through Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. If not, this will be online afterwards as an archive, so you should be able to download it and watch it at your own pace. Either way, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share if you find the broadcast or the contents that we're discussing quite useful. Now, the next section is a review of politics around the UK. I think I said at the head of the program, I have neglected to actually mention or have a slide about the fact that the UK is going to have a general election. I think is it July the 4th? Yes, in the American Independence Day. That's right. We can touch on that, or if anyone has any questions around that, because we don't have many programs left for this season, please feel free to ask questions around that, because we won't, when we come back, the election would have finished. So I will talk about the news related to this section, but it's for you, if you have any questions, to please raise them in the usual way. Now, I'm going to start off with a story from our sister. I say that loosely, but she is unfortunately one of our sisters, Kemi Badenoch, who's actually pushing this new mantra, and she's got a new one every week, that businesses should ditch any form of political activism. And she says that the public want the focus of business to be solely on delivering great products and services, and not any kind of activism, not any kind of advocacy of political causes. And she claims that when they do this, these businesses repel as many people as they attract. Of course, this is complete nonsense. And as a conservative, it's unsurprising she would say this. I'm old enough to remember corporate social responsibility, and many of you will know that businesses that have ethical credentials. What's that thing? What's Braddock, the one who had the healthy food store? Anita Ruddock, that was her name. There are many businesses. John Lewis, for example, which has its scheme which helps the workers and shares the profits amongst the workers. Businesses that have ethical credentials that help people. That I remember when Starbucks came out and it was exploiting the workers in Ethiopia, and so other coffee vendors decided that they wouldn't use those same policies. There was also what was that, fair trade, the fair trade thing. So with chocolate, there's many businesses kind of like, talk about their political causes. They use activism and they attract more business. So this idea that they repel more people than they attract is complete nonsense. But of course, this is the Sunday Express, which is a racist newspaper, and they draw on data from LinkedIn to say that the UK employs almost twice as many diversity and inclusion workers as any other country, with a job title head of diversity doubling globally between 2015 and 2020. So they look at this as a bad thing, that a business has got inclusive practice as a negative, which in other words they're saying is that they want to keep white supremacy and whiteness and kind of like monoculturalism as the default norm, and to forget about having any ethical values that improves social life in the UK. Nonsense story, but this is going to be coming up in the election. Sister Oleander.
Yes, so we have a message from FB Comms. Kemi, lots of laughter. I believe when you stand for something, you sustain longer.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for that. And yes, of course, if you're just bland, then people just walk past you. You have to have some kind of values. You have to have some kind of ethos. It makes no sense to have no mantra, no vision, and expect people to actually be around and support you. What stops them from jumping ship to someone else? It's madness. But this is conservatives, right? This is their brand. Greed, money, profit. That's it. And forget the pain that's being caused. Let me move on to the next story, because this one again is definitely more politics. And some of you will have heard that the Grenfell inquiry has now said that its final report will be published in the autumn. So it's written to most of the court participants, and that it will be this September, before it kind of like reveals this phase 2 report. There was 2 phases. I'm not even going to go into the nonsense about all of that. There was a phase 1 report which had interim recommendations. This is the phase 2 report. That in itself isn't really the news, if you think about that. I mean, the interim reports, the government says that it's done, 15, or out of 15 recommendations, it's done 11 of the recommendations, and it's working on the remaining 4. I'm a bit suspect about that, especially with people like Michael Gove and some of the other Tories who were in charge of implementing those changes now leaving Parliament at the next general election. But the issue that I'm most concerned about with this particular story is that the Metropolitan Police and the Crown Prosecution Service have said that there'll be no charges for manslaughter. At least none of them will be announced until late 2026 at the earliest. And they say this is due to the complexity of the inquiry. Now, what this is showing, so I think if you hear me right, it's like the report's going to be published this September, but no one will be prosecuted. Absolutely no one for manslaughter. And even if they found them, there'll be no announcements made until 2026. And they say late 2026, so it could actually be 2027. This is a disgusting situation. I think there's what's that phrase? Justice denied is justice delayed is justice denied. Now, Grenfell United, one of the organising groups that's been campaigning for justice for the family, just like Justice for Grenfell, have really said that 10 years. We waited 10 years, and waiting 10 years until justice, and now being told that we had to wait even longer. Is in anticipation of the findings is something that they just can't take. It's just untenable. But that's the situation as it is right now, and there is something to be said about the use of inquiries to kick things into the long grass. And I really would like to talk about this, but I don't think we're going to have time. That actually inquiries are used to kick things into the long grass, but this depends on the background of the individuals. So if the individuals come from particular elite communities, then actually inquiries work quite fast, and actually prosecutions and reparation and compensation is pushed through very quickly. But if those who are victimized by a system come from certain marginalised minority ethnic communities, then the inquiry is just used as a stalling tactic, and the people who committed those crimes are often left to resign or even pass away into their twilight years before there's justice. I'm going to move on. It's a horrible story, but it's important just to be aware of the politics around it. Talking about politics, we have again, I pause when I say the word brother, and it's really bad of me. I shouldn't do that. David Lammy, the politician, the shadow foreign secretary. Yeah, he's foreign secretary. So our brother, loosely, in the same way as Kenny Badenoch, David Lammy has actually rejected calls to label former US President Donald Trump as a racist. Now, you're thinking, hold on, didn't Lammy call him like a neo-Nazi? Like, did he say that he was kind of like a sociopath, like, a few years back? Yes, he did. But now that Lammy is kind of like so close to grasping power, he's getting, his saliva is dripping. He refuses to recognize that he is a racist, which says much to what he'll be like if he's in power. And as he addressed a right-wing think tank in the US, I think it was 2 weeks ago, actually, I don't think he knew, that's what it's been reported, that it was being streamed live. And so in front of this audience of right-wing politicians and public members who are clearly racist, he said he could be described as a small c conservative politician. I'm not making it up. His exact words were, I have many friends in the Republican Party. I'm a good Christian boy. He used that word. He infantilized himself, calling himself a Christian boy. And I can be described and have been described as a small c conservative kind of Labour politician. And this whole idea, a small c conservative kind of Labour politician, it's kind of like an admission that Labour politicians are now conservative. But he didn't know it was being streamed live. That's what the reports are saying. So he came out and he's exposed himself. We know this. We know that he's an opportunist. But it's quite sad that he would do this, and more sad that he won't actually condemn Donald Trump. It just says much about his lack of ethical conviction. His moral conviction. I'm going to move on because we ain't got time to be wasting it on people who betray our community. I say, as we go to someone else who betrays our community. And yes, I'm not going to spend much story. And I was very naughty for calling our brother. Sean Bailey, who you might remember some time ago, Emmerdent spoke about how he'd been utilized as a token ghetto boy. And she apologized because he claimed to be offended by this. But the reason I'm sharing this story is not because I have much to say about him that you don't know already, but just simply the fact that he's now running around the media saying that stopping, and bringing an end to stop and search was a disaster for our children. He's making this comment that, every week I'm contacted by grieving parents who have lost their child to knife crime, and we must get the weapons off our streets. And every time we kind of like pull back on stop and search, it's causing this problem, and it's a disaster. We need more stop and search, more and more and more and more. Idiot. Next story, if you want to understand politics. This one's an interesting one. It's the sort of stuff that happens behind closed doors. Meet one Hardeep Singh, or Peter Verdi. Now, he's been charged with bribing Asot Michael, who you can see in the image, who was Minister of Investment and Trade in Antigua and Barbuda. Now, those of you who know, this is a nation in the Caribbean. Now, the two parties, Labour and Conservative, are under the spotlight because they continued to take Verdi's money. He's quite wealthy, even after he was being investigated for alleged bribery, and he'd been arrested by the National Crime Agency. So they knew he was a wrong, they knew he was a bad one, but they still took his money. Now, he's been suspected of giving more than £100,000 to the Tories and £2,000 to Preet Gill, who is a shadow minister for primary care and public health. So it's both Labour and the Conservatives. He's kind of like playing games on both sides. Tories 100 grand, though. That's obviously far more substantial. But yeah, he flashes his money around for influence, and the parties don't really care. Just interesting news, right? Just to understand how this sort of stuff works. I remember back in the day when every 5 minutes I'd be saying that Africa was the hotbed for corruption, but there we go. Okay, and the final story for this particular section is one we covered a few months back, and this is again a ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous story. But unfortunately, it's carried wings. It's got some serious consequences. Now, Maria Hussein, who's 37 years of age, she was arrested by police after she posted an image in November on social media of her holding. No, she didn't post the image. I'll be clear. Someone else posted an image of her, and the police used that image to call and find her of holding a placard at a pro-Palestine demonstration in London. Now, it was a protest kind of like attended by hundreds of thousands of people, if I remember correctly. And the picture was a harmless picture. You can see it in the screenshot above, and it depicted the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, and the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, as coconuts. Now, this woman has been charged, Marina Hussein has been charged with a racially aggravated public order defense. She was being investigated at the time for a hate crime. It's an absolutely ridiculous situation. Let me see if I can, I'm going to try something new and see if I can play.
But do you now accept that some people today would find the placard to be offensive?
I think that although some language and statements may be pejorative, it doesn't make it racist. Coconuts. Brown on the outside, white supremacist values on the inside.
What's interesting being a black politician is that you get it from both ends. You're either not black enough or you're too black. And that leads to comments such as coconut, bounty on a personal level. If you've been attacked so much, you have to say, look, enough's enough.
Yeah, so again, you know, we have someone who's actually critiquing the racist policies of Suella Braverman and Rishi Sunak, who I don't think anyone would doubt the level of Afrophobia and racism is there. And we have Sean Bailey once again saying enough is enough. We can only hope that this case is dropped. It's just a waste of public funds and resources, but it's got some serious consequences for her. She's convicted and found guilty of a hate crime or an aggravated public order offence for showing carrying a placard using the imagery of a coconut. I just want us to be aware of what's going on and keep a look over this, even though it's an Asian woman involved. It's something that has implications for all of us. Okay. It's just Oleander. Sorry, I think I just saw you.
Yes, yeah. So there's just a couple of comments. Reparation Nation sends greetings, and
Greetings.
FBcom says, this is your previous slide, I think, but one. The pursuit of power can corrupt individuals who lack an awareness of the consequent degradation of their moral and ethical integrity. David Lammy, the price is expensive.
Yeah, it's difficult to imagine that he took over the space held by our beloved Bernie Grant and now obviously ancestor. Was that saying that absolute power corrupts and power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely? It would seem to be the case. The desperation to be in a position of power has led to many of us, the Lammies. I mean, Lammy is actually now in the House of Lords. You know, you're supposed to call him Lord Lammy, not Lammy, Bailey, Sean Bailey. I can never call him Lord Bailey. That's ridiculous. But you know, they are rewarded for being deputies of white supremacy, or as some people would say, and I would, coconuts or bounties. And these are critiques of their political ideology. They're not racist comments, and it's ridiculous that someone's going to court for saying something that is self-evident to everyone. I don't even think Europeans would argue with the fact that these people are coconuts and they are deputies for white supremacy. But here we go. This is the world we live in. Let me move on. Sorry, I didn't actually say about the section. We'll talk about this story in a second. But yes, we are going to deal with Afrophobia and white supremacy, as we have been doing it through the politics system anyway. But just as a reminder, you are watching the Galleys Pan-African Community News Update. We are live. Please feel free to interact with us if you are with us on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. We should be able to see your comments, and Sister Oleander's in the studio, so she'll read them out. There is an election taking place in 6 weeks' time. We'll be back after the election. I think that'll be our final one for the season. So if you have any political questions, anything to do with the election, please feel free to ask questions or to make comments as well. That's also useful. It is your program. And don't forget to subscribe, like, share if you find this broadcast useful. Now, the next section, as you can see, which seems to be running throughout the whole program, unfortunately, is the theme of Afrophobia and white supremacy. And this is a selection of stories and that have been taking place over the last couple of weeks, because literally every couple of weeks there are loads of stories and we can only do a small section of them. So moving on, just as a reminder, this is the image of Monza El Shanobi, and he is someone who posted a racist slur against our brother, the England footballer Bukayo Saka. I'm not a great football fan, so please forgive me for not remembering the actual position that he's in. Is a right wing, not a right wing striker or defense, blah blah blah. The issue here is that El Shanobi posted this racist slur about him, using the Afrophobic and dehumanizing term coon after England lost to France. Now, there were many people who were straight out racist towards our brothers. It wasn't just Bukayo Saka who was insulted, but in this particular case, El Shanobi admitted writing the derogatory post, but claimed he did not think the term was racist and he did not intend those viewing it to be called stress or anxiety. Now, he was trying to use language to get out of legal issues. He's using these terms specifically to stop himself from being found guilty, because he was being prosecuted under the Malicious Communications Act. It didn't work. He received a football banning order and was made to pay a fine. But he appealed that decision, and he actually won his appeal, because what he did was that he argued he had not sent the tweet directly to our brother Bukayo Saka, and instead he had just posted it on his timeline, which meant that he hadn't sent it directly to him, so it wasn't deliberately meant to harm him, wasn't malicious. And because the wording of the Malicious Communications Act did not cover this scenario, and the reason why it doesn't come up for this scenario about posting something online which can be seen by someone is because it was written before the widespread social media phenomenon took place. It was designed really to address letters when people were writing, kind of like hateful letters and pointing through people's letterbox. He actually won his appeal. So I just thought it's interesting to know that, right? So people can post things, and they, even though that thing is a racist, inciting hate crimes is one thing. That's another offense. But in this particular case, he was found guilty of trying to, kind of like be racist towards and cause our brother distress, and he couldn't have done because he didn't direct it to him. So, technicalities, but it's important to understand this sort of stuff that's happening. Whether the law will be changed and made up to date to prevent this happening is another thing. I don't think they will, because if they did that, then a lot of MPs who post straight out racist comments about individuals, especially those that think that anyone who's African is fair game, would actually be up for a charge, or potentially up for a charge of violating the Malicious Communications Act. Anyway, let me move on to the next story. Sorry for all the technical stuff on that one. It's just worthy to note this sort of stuff. Now, I don't like spending much time on the same characters in a particular program, but again, we have Kemi Badenoch coming out and talking in a national paper, and she's saying, and she's amongst those who are criticizing the National Trust for replacing the term ethnic minority in some of its comments and recent publications with the term global majority. And in this particular case, it's because they use a term for what's called an inclusive walking project. And this is a really good initiative, right? Because we saw the Countryside report, which talked about the racism in the UK around in the countryside. And so this project is trying to do something that is to encourage more people to go out into the countryside and celebrate the nation's diversity. And so this Walk Together Pathway project uses what they felt is the most appropriate language, which is global majority, to describe it. And Badenoch says that this is anti-white rhetoric. I mean, the stupidity of the woman, anti-white rhetoric. Now, you know, I'm not going to go into the ins and outs about whether global majority is the right term, but what we do recognize is that it was her own government that acknowledged that the term BAME was outdated and problematic, correctly so. The government dropped it a couple of years ago, saying it was no longer helpful. And so that we are in search of a replacement. Now, many local authorities are using global majority as a collective term. I'm not saying it's perfect. It is better than BAME. But to argue that it's anti-white is, you know, it's a bad knock, isn't it? It's, you know, so that's that story. We started the program off with our libation section, and in our libation section, I explained a little bit about the Organization of African Unity, which was an amazing institution set up with the leaders who are fighting against colonialism on the motherland. And I spoke about how over time it had been changed into the African Union, which it is today, and African Liberation Day was launched to celebrate that commemoration. Well, now it's called Africa Day, and this is a big problem because Africa Day doesn't talk about liberation, it doesn't talk about the struggles. I mean, unless, you know, people would deliberately make a focus on it. And if you want a great example of why the liberation in African Liberation Day is so important, take a look at this image. In fact, let me put it up on the screen a bit bigger. Now, while most organizations that are Pan-African in focused on freedom and liberation movements and, you know, fallen heroes yesterday, TNM, which is a communications company in Malawi, decided to issue this image where its CEO, I don't know if you can see him, is sitting down on a throne surrounded by Africans who are standing and kneeling next to him. And this is their Africa Day celebratory image. Now, just before, you know, those of you shout me, "Oh, you're being harsh, you're being harsh." There are other photos, and I've put the other photos there. You can see the other images that are there. My concern is, why did they select this particular one? Why is this one being promoted? Now, some people will say, well, why shouldn't it be promoted? If you don't understand that, then you should keep the word African Liberation Day out of your mouth. You shouldn't even be talking about Africa Day because you have no understanding. But this is what's taking place in the world today. This is yesterday, because yesterday was African Liberation Day. The African Liberation Day debate must continue because, again, it's about political literacy. And without political literacy, we let foolishness like this occur. That's on the motherland. Here in the UK, in Old Blighty, we have this strange scenario where we're now seeing Zionists and white supremacists protesting together. They're uniting to abuse human rights activists who are calling for an end to the attack on innocent Palestinians by the Israeli occupation force. Now, that image you can see there is outside UCL that took place yesterday. There's a student encampment there. They're very peaceful. I walk through that when I go in to do my work. They're no problem. They're educating. They're helping. But yet, what we're seeing are thugs, violent thugs joining up. They went to other spaces. I think they went to SOAS. The day before they went to Finchley. They're giving their right-wing salutes. The Hitler thing, and this is growing. This Afrophobic attitude, these attitudes, these thoughts are growing in the UK. We're not hearing any of our politicians speaking about it. We get the sense that there's an increase in Islamophobia, we're not getting the sense that there's an increase in Afrophobia at the same time, and both of them need to be addressed. There are two images up there on the top that you can see. I'm going to show one of them in a second, but what we're seeing, in fact, no, let me play. Let's see if I can get this working. I'm hoping this is playing. It's a new thing, me trying to get the videos to come through. So please bear with me. It's quite tricky getting it to work. But let me increase the screen. And you can see what took place yesterday at a tube station. This should just be...
Yes, I need you to dirty fucking Muslims. They've been anti-Semitic. Assaulting a young girl. They're anti-Semitic. You are vile. You are below everyone. Poor excuse for a human being. How dare you? And you're not. How dare you? Look at you. You're the one putting hands on women. Disgusting. You're going to leave what happened. I'm fully trained as an MMA fighter. You don't want to touch me. I'm an IDF. You don't want to touch me. I'm an IDF soldier. I don't give two fucks.
Sorry, I don't know what happened there.
Yes, I need you to dirty fucking Muslims. They've been anti-Semitic. Assaulting a young girl. They're anti-Semitic. You are vile. You are below everyone. Poor excuse for a human being. How dare you? And you're not. How dare you? Look at you. You're the one putting hands on women. Disgusting. You're going to leave what happened. I'm fully trained as an MMA fighter. You don't want to touch me. I'm an IDF. You don't want to touch me. I'm an IDF soldier. I don't give two flying fucks. Don't touch me. That's what you want to do. Get him away. I'm an IDF. I'm an IDF soldier. For real. IDF soldier.
Now, sorry for the technical issues. I'm still learning with putting videos into our clips. It's a little bit tricky trying to do this. But what you saw there was our heroic sister's stance. I mean, it was amazing. She's pushing back against this guy. He's insulting a Muslim woman. He hadn't seen, it wasn't on the footage, but before that, he'd insulted a Muslim woman with some, straight out Islamophobic comments. Now, she came back and she was kind of like trying to defend her, and then he started using kind of like Afrophobic language, pushing against her, being abusive and starting to be physically violent. She was able to defend herself. She was an MMA a fighter, or she had those skill sets. But he then revealed that he was, or he claims to reveal that he was an IDF fighter. This is what's taking place. Like I said, this was yesterday from what I can gather. And this increase in Afrophobia alongside Islamophobia is something we need to keep an eye at, because they're attacking not just kind of like Muslims who are protesting against the Zionist approach, what's happening in Palestine, but they're also attacking those African people who sympathize with them. Anyone who kind of like bigs up the actions of South Africa or Tanzania for calling out the racism, calling out genocide. So this is a very important thing to do. I haven't installed the other clip for the debate you can see on the screen as well. But what I will also say, you can find this online, is that there's a young sister called Fiona Lally, who you can see in the image, on that image that's called Israel versus Palestine. And she's been going around on social media pushing back against racists. She challenged and shamed, what's her name, Suella Braverman, recently on one of these GBTV programs. And what you'll hear in this particular clip, I don't have it here, but you can check it if you look for it, is this commentator, James Well, telling her, if you don't like living in this country, why don't you live somewhere else? And so we're getting back to that world, just as we're getting into election, where they're openly Afrophobic, openly racist, openly Islamophobic. They've always been misogynistic. But I just want to make it clear that this increase in Afrophobia, there isn't anyone really talking about this right now, because everyone's just focusing solely on the Islamophobic content or the anti-Semitic content. But we as a community are that, we are becoming vulnerable. And I give thanks to the brother for stepping in to protect our sister, because she was the one who was doing the heroic stance as far as I'm concerned. That she's the one who's making clear and challenging his aggressive situation. But it's so beautiful to know that, that some of us will actually step in and make sure that we are safe. All of us are safe. I should also say that the police did arrest that guy, the racist, the white supremacist, at a Whitechapel station for racially aggravated assault. Sister Oleander.
Yes, I mean, you said two of the things that I was going to say. One is that I was really happy to see the brother step in, because I was thinking all that time, is anyone going to step in? To be honest, she probably didn't need, from what she was saying, a physical thing. But at the same time, they need to understand you can't mess with us,
Yeah.
because that, I think, sadly, I kind of think that in a way that the majority in this country do think that we don't stand up for each other. So when it does happen, I get really happy, because it made me really angry when I saw that. I just anyway, but that was
Well,
one of the
no,
things.
it's a good point. Just to say one thing, what happened to Diane Abbott is directly linked to the way he can talk. He thinks he can talk to her. The fact that that Hester can make a comment saying that he thinks that all African women should be, killed, or it makes him hate all African women, and nothing happens. That sends a signal to these white supremacists. It says to them that actually African women are fair game. We can touch them. If we can touch their icon, the one who's in Parliament, and she can be suspended, and she's not going to have a suspension, kind of like the decision of the investigation into suspension revealed until after the selection period for who can go forward in the election, then, the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, all the elites are saying that actually African women, rough them up, man. Nothing's going to happen. And we spoke about, and sorry about this rant, but we opened with libations for George Floyd. And when I was looking through the images of what we was going to share and stuff like that, I looked into a couple of American sites, and the image that they showed on American sites were some powerful protests. But the image that they used to show the British protests for George Floyd, do you know what image they used? They used that image of that brother who was carrying that European, who the one who was the white supremacist, and he was carrying him on his shoulder. That's the image that's gone around the world about our passivity. That's what they use to say that's how we have supported the movement for justice for George Floyd. Not what's happened in Bristol, not what happened in London. I mean, so it vexed me. Sorry, you're right.
Yeah. Okay, and so just moving on a little bit. So Learn to Dig Two Pits says, greetings, family.
Greetings.
And FP Comms just concurs with what you said, that he was arrested.
Give thanks, and thank you for sharing that information as well. I mean, it's important because I don't always have all the latest stuff on it. But yes, he was arrested, and that's good. Let me move on with the story. See, them things get me vexed, which is why I'll try and shift quite quickly through, because we've got a lot to talk about. Okay, so the next story is a report. I think it was in the Observer, and they've done some digging, they've done some research, and they found out that the Church of England's top people, right at the top of the hierarchy of the Church of England, they knew. I mean, we know this, but they've got the evidence now that they knew and approved the exchange of enslaved Africans during the 18th century. They knew this. So, the Archbishop Thomas Secker knew that these crimes were leading to Africans being beaten, being branded with these hot metals, with these Africans being driven to suicide. They knew about all these crimes. It was done through their missionary arm, the Society for Propagation of the Gospel in Foreign Parts. They call it the SPG, but they still did it anyway. And the Codrington forced labour camps generated at least £5 million a year in today's money, and it covered around 760 acres. So, I mean, this is it's water wet again. We know this, but now they have evidence to confirm this. Now, Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, said it's a particularly painful history, and you can see him in the image here talking about this. And so there's something to be said about pretending it's only a few, it's only the small elite, it's only a few businessmen involved in enslavement. We know that at every level, every major institution in the UK was somehow profiting from this immoral, hideous act. And this is just talking about the enslavement period of Arthur. They don't even discuss the colonial period of enslavement. But, you know, I thought I'd share that with you. The next story is related. And this is, I mean, I know one of you asked me to give an update on the National Reparations Commission's progress, and I haven't got any information. I've been looking. I'm trying to find out. We've seen all that stuff from the church about what it's going to do to help with reparations and stuff like that. It's going to have a fund. I can't find anything that it's done since that time. But what we are starting to see now is comments from, in this particular case, coming from people like Michael Banner, who's the Dean of Trinity College, Cambridge. Now, he's described himself as a campaigner on the issue of reparations. And he says that actually Scotland should pay tens of billions in reparations to Caribbean nations. And, you know, this is all very nice. This is all very nice and sweet and all very kind of Teletubbish and stuff like this. And, you know, don't get me wrong, it's good that he's coming out and saying this sort of stuff. But I really do worry about the people who are leading the reparations story, who are leading the campaign, who is deciding what reparations is, deciding how much any compensation should be. I mean, he's saying that the sum should come in at more than 20 billion, which is what he would argue 1/10 of what is owed by Britain as a whole. Says who? Who tells you that? Did we collectively agree with that? It's like, I mean, don't get me wrong, this guy could be a very nice guy. The fact that he's using his authority to raise this issue and to push it forward, there's just something that niggles at me. It's bugging me that the reparations movement has been well and truly compromised, and it just looks like it's hijacked. So this is not a critique of Banner. I don't know the guy. I haven't read his work. I haven't seen his report. His figures could be accurate. All I'm going to say is that they should be talking about compensation and keep the word reparations out of their mouth, because they don't understand what reparations is if they think that they can equate it to a financial settlement. That's like an insurance business. Reparations is far deeper, and it really pissed me off. But like I said, I don't know this person. I don't know the research. I'm just bringing the news. Let me move on. The next story is about a continuation of the hostile environment. Now, some people call this the Windrush scandal. It's the government, it's the Home Office scandal, but you know, the Windrush scandal is one term, whatever you want to call it. It's a hostile environment scandal. This is a feisty story where the son of a man who was a victim of this abuse says that the Home Office asked him to do a DNA test to prove his relationship to his father. And this is if he wanted to receive compensation. Now, Dijon Jabrian Bryan, the brother you can see on the screen, he's a baby with his father, Anthony Bryan. You might remember the name Anthony Bryan because Anthony Bryan was part of a, what's that BBC documentary where they showed his life story. He received this outrageous letter asking for evidence of his relationship with his father. Now, our sister, the Queen, Jacqueline Mackenzie, she's actually just said that this letter was intrusive and traumatic. And now the Home Office is saying that, look, you know what? We get it. Okay, you don't have to provide DNA evidence. You know, the BBC has already contacted us. You know, it's fine. But why are they asking these things in the first place? Why are they re-traumatizing people who are already traumatized? Why are they rubbing salt into the wound? Why is the Home Office doing the compensation scheme for a problem that it caused? I shouldn't even have to be talking on this. Why hasn't it been moved to another organization that's independent? Why hasn't the so-called Labour Party, with people like David Lammy, suggested that it's made into an independent process? Why? Because of politics, because they don't believe in justice. This is another discussion. We can have a whole program around the insult that this scheme, it was created by an African. That's another issue. And I wrote to that African and told him don't put a ceiling on the limit. And him faced himself. He was so feisty with his response. I'm not even going to go into that. And now that they can see that I was right, everyone's jumping on saying, oh my God, the Windrush, rah, 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 rah. This vexed me so as well. Next story is related again. It doesn't technically come under the Windrush title. It comes under the hostile environment title. And so the elder that you see here, Nelson Shade, 74 years of age. He came to the UK on a student visa from Ghana in 1977. He was 28 then. But now he's been told he's got to wait a decade before he's officially allowed to stay permanently. Can you imagine that? He's 74 and he's got to wait another 10 years. Now, he has paid taxes all of his adult life. But if he wants to access services like the NHS, if he wants to stay in the UK, he's got to pay thousands of pounds. He has no access to public funds or pension credits. And this is after the Home Office refused to grant him indefinite leave to remain. And they've actually told him, and wrongly so, but they've told him to apply for the Windrush scheme. This is the kind of trickery. In fact, this should have gone into the politics section. This is the kind of trickery that's going on. You know, if you're thinking, that face looks familiar, Nelson Shaw, wasn't he on the news like some time ago? Yeah, he was. In 2013, the shop that he run was robbed. You know, the burglars just mashed up everything. And then what happened was that he wept tears of gratitude because the local community that he belongs to, that he has supported and been a part, they rallied around to find money to stop him going out of business. He's a part of the fabric of the UK. In that, you know, he is part of it. And yet this is how the country treats him. They call it the Windrush, they call it the hostile environment, whatever it is, it's a wickedness. It doesn't stop there. Meet Anthony Olubunmi George, 61 years of age. He came to the UK at the age of 24 in 1986. He came from Nigeria. Now, he has not left the UK since. He's got no criminal convictions. And yet, despite having a stroke in 2019, 2 strokes, which left him with speech problems and mobility issues, he's now been threatened with removal from the UK by the Home Office. They're running this foolishness about putting him on a plane, all this kind of nonsense that's going on there. Now, he's made various applications for leave to remain in the UK, but the Home Office has continuously rejected them. Just the other day, you know, they rejected recently. Now, I'm going to sound like a scratch record if I say exactly what's going on, because it's the same thing as with our other elder. In this particular case, it gets more complicated because he wrote to his solicitors and told him, look, sort this out. And in 2005, his previous solicitors submitted a forged document. They had a forged entry stamp in his passport. And, you know, they've been reported to the police and legal regulatory bodies, but that wasn't him. He didn't do that. Like I said, he's been in the UK 38 years. He's no criminal record, nothing, paying tax, nothing. He's done nothing wrong. But because his solicitors were desperate to try and find a solution, and I'm not justifying forging documents. I understand it, but I'm not justifying it. Because they forged it, he's been caught up in this madness. To be honest with you, he shouldn't even have to have gone through the process. It's like, you know, if he was from Australia, if he was from Canada, if he's from New Zealand, and it wouldn't have any of these problems. He's from America. But because he's from Nigeria, hostile environment. Hey, let's move on to the next story. Now, this is probably a good news story, and perhaps I should have put this in the good news section, but, you know, it's dealing with something that we shouldn't have to do. It is a positive story. Sister Oleander, do you want me to wait till I finish this?
No, because this one's about the previous, so otherwise we'll...
Okay.
So it's from Del Smith. It says, I love your passion, Brother Toyin. I hear your Jamaican patois coming out, and I'm assuming your lovely wife has an influence. And I'm sure you have Jamaican brothers as well as friends.
My wife is from St. Lucia, but I'm a Pan-Africanist, so I tea from all of our people and I learn and grow from it. But give thanks.
As am I.
Oh, okay. So talking about our sister from Jamaica as well. Let me continue this story. I think we spoke about this, must have been a few months ago. And this is our sister Andrea Mears. She was taking her school to an employment tribunal because she has claimed quite clearly that the school racially discriminated against her and unfairly dismissed her. And said things like, well, I say said things, but proved things like the leadership team threatened to go on strike or leave the school if she returned to work. Now, our sister was just making sure the children were not exposed to Afrophobic content in the school. She was quite passionate about it. She was quite forthright with it, but she wasn't doing anything wrong. And they just roughed her up. They teased her in a bad way, and they dismissed her. But thankfully, the judge has said, look, even though our sister's complaints were at times harsh and inappropriate in tone, that the letters from the senior leadership team used very highly emotive language, and they were excessive, and they were overclaiming an impact. And so they say that she would not have been fired if she had not been of African heritage. This would not have happened. They would have had a one-to-one with her. They would have tried to reason it with her, but they didn't try and do that. They just tried to get rid of her and create this environment where she just couldn't stay. So she's won the case, and I think this is an amazing result, and it's something that we learn from. It's not fair, because I haven't been for one of these things. Having to defend yourself and fight for something that you believe in is so difficult. You know, the sister's been smeared on the Daily Mail. People are attacking her, her name, her identity, her passion, but she's won the case. So it is a good news story, but it's just something to be aware of, that this is still taking place in the UK. Again, it is good news, but I don't like to put these in good news because they come from a negative place. So the woman you can see on the screen, her name is Winnie Connors, and she's been jailed for 20 months for encouraging a schoolgirl to punch and rip out an African girl's hair. And you might have seen that footage on social media. We showed it again a few months ago. This was from the Thomas Snivet's College. Now there are growing calls to hold the principal, Richard Beeson, to account, because I think he was seen in the footage as well. But this is again a call for justice. There was a protest outside the school once the social media clip was shown. I hope the young girl is fine and her family have been taken care of, and her friends and the family have had some kind of a counselling around it, because it was a horrendous situation, and no young person should A, be exposed to that, and then B, have to have that exposed around the world. There is that other footage of the young brother who was bullied. We haven't had an update on that story, the one who was forced to kiss the boot of a racist. But yeah, this is a good news story, even though it comes from a negative place, a negative story. The next story, in fact, the next couple of stories are to do with education again. This is a young prince, Farouk James, and he's a 12-year-old who's been told he's going to be kicked out of school because his hair does not fit in with their uniform policy. I thought we'd been done with these particular stories. Now, he makes sure, or his parent makes sure, that his hair is braided neatly for school, but they're saying he needs to chop off his locks, and that just can't happen. His mother has said she's asked for exemptions based on cultural and medical grounds, but they have been refused. I think the school will find out that actually they have to make some kind of exceptions if it's for cultural grounds. But again, the labor of work having to take this through the court, just for being ourselves is ridiculous. But this is the story. I'm sharing it with you. We'll wait to see what happens. He's already been given several detentions at his school since April, just because of his hair. It's ridiculous that this is still taking place in England, in UK schools, in British schools. But here we go. Well, my voice is going. I'm going to take a bit of water. 1 second. Okay. And the final story for this section is it's one that talks about these students who have come from Nigeria who have actually been thrown off. I mean, literally thrown off university courses and ordered to leave the UK after there was a crisis in Nigeria, causing the naira to crash. And so, after their savings were devalued, they struggled to pay their tuition fees on time. And the university, which is Teesside University, were blocked from their studies and reported to the Home Office. The university is now, this is part of the problem with the prevent policy. The university has now become immigration police. So through no fault of their own, their savings, the value of their savings plummeted because of the plummet in Naira. This is why I think that the economic system as it is right now is out. It is still racist, and we should opt out of that, because the idea that a pound or a dollar is worth more than our indigenous currency is madness. But we still decide to stick with those systems, which is why I'm not a fan of the African Union as opposed to OAU. But some of these students have said that you know, ever since all this stuff has happened to them, that they're feeling suicidal. They've accused the university of taking a heartless approach to those who've fallen into arrears. You know, some students are saying that they have to travel from Teesside to Liverpool each weekend to work 18-hour jobs in an attempt to pay off the outstanding fees. And just to give you an idea of what the fees is, one of them has said that, look, I've paid 14 grand and have a balance of another 14 grand. So I can't stress, you know, and you heard me right. They've already paid 14 grand and they had to pay another 14 grand. And the reason why it's taking place is because universities are rinsing international students. They're seeing fellow human beings, these students who come to their universities, as cash cows. And so the moment there's some kind of problem, they have these little schemes where they give little token payments, like a couple of £100 there and there, if they're in hardship. So they call them hardship funds and stuff like that. But the reality situation is, what covers you for this? If you put all your life savings into going to university, to travel into the UK, it's just to try and better your life, to try and get an education, to try and do something. And then the Naira falls because some venture capitalist has invested wrongly, or someone in Liverpool Street, one of the, you know, has messed around and pressed the wrong button, or whatever it is, and the value of your savings plummeted. Why should that impact on your university study? Why should the university feel that they have to now report you to the Home Office? Why should you be deported? This is what's taking place. So I thought I'd share that. This is the last story on this section, and I'm going to move on rapidly. I know time is going at 1.5 hours mark, the 19 minutes mark, and we're going to go into the issues of policing. Just as a heads up, you are watching Legality's Pan-African Community News Update. Sister Oleander.
Yes, so we have a comment from FP Comms, and it's regarding the young prince. She says, look at that cute young prince. You can change your gender, but an African prince can't have long hair. Make it make sense.
You can change your gender, but I'm not.
Yeah, in school, you can change your gender, right? You can say you're a girl.
Oh, I
when
see
you're
what you're
a
saying.
boy.
So what they
I
allowed
believe-
to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, they were
Yeah,
allowed
right.
to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And this is all about like compliance. This is all about trying to get everyone to conform into a particular mold of what it must be to be normal. And even that, the you know, when it comes to gender issues, even then they have this strange way of thinking about these kind of issues. But yeah, and I'll give thanks. You are watching Legality's Pan-African Community News Update. If you are watching live, you're welcome to interact with us through Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. And I always say, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, blah, 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 if you find this useful. I'm going to go through some policing matters. I don't think we have as many as usual, which is quite good. But these are the things that have taken place over the last couple of weeks around the UK in our community. Sadly, they probably won't be a surprise to you. So I'm going to start off, as I made mention to and hinted to before, this increase and revelation of stop and search. And we now know that over 400 children under the age of 10, which is the age of criminal responsibility in the UK, have faced stop and search by police last year, including some who were strip search. And it doesn't surprise you, I'm sure, to learn that nearly a quarter of the searches were conducted on those from African, Asian, or other minority ethnic backgrounds, which is disproportionately high compared with the population. And you know, this disproportionality is I sound like a scratch record. I don't even like saying it anymore. What we do know, that what's new in this particular round, is that the majority of stop and searches, which is 79%, led to no further action from officers. So we're seeing a lot of the children being humiliated in public spaces and strip searched and harassed for no reason. So there's been no further action, either formal or informal. And the highest number of searches on children under 10 was logged by Avon and Somerset Police, which is then followed by Kent Police and then Metropolitan Police. And that's quite interesting. I didn't know that Avon and Somerset had this issue. I expected it to be Met Police. But what we do know now is that more than 200 of searches related to drugs, while 87 related to suspicions of carrying offensive weapons. So young children are being stopped for drugs or weapons. That's what it seems like the majority of these searches. I say majority, I mean, it's just over half of those searches are. I don't know what the other causes are, if that's what half of them are for. That makes me very curious. Is it for having long hair? Is that for having locks? Is that what you're being stopped and searched for? But we know just over half have been stopped and searched for drugs or weapons. Surprise, surprise, the image you see is the policing minister, Chris Phillips, and he said that stop and searches were not used nearly often enough by police. So he, just like his fellow comrade, Sean Bailey, are saying that these police powers should be used and even far more often, not just on children, but on all African people and all people from minority communities. What can I say? The next story, and finally, the only one for this section actually this week, is a reminder of why we need what they call intelligence-led policing, why we need people to think before they act when they've got a uniform on. And the good news is that the Metropolitan Police Officer Perry Lafwood, who you can see in the image, has been found guilty of assault after he wrongly arrested a woman for bus fare evasion. Now, many of you would have seen this clip when he manhandled our sister Joycelyn Ajimang in Croydon in front of her young son last July while calling her a daft cow. Now, she said that she felt very violated and was left with pain in her wrist and bruised shoulder. And the judge has agreed that it was not necessary to grab her arm in the way he did. It wasn't necessary to handcuff her, to arrest her, and that there wasn't any reasonable grounds to suggest arrest was necessary. So it's not just happening to our children, it's also happening to adults. And if you remember the days of SUS in the 80s, it was also happening to our elders. So don't think that anyone's exempt from this kind of barbaric police activity. I'm going to try and play a sample of the clip. It's irritating to watch, but sometimes when I say irritating, I mean it's a bit distressing when you hear it, and it's irritating because it reminds you of what we're going through. But it's important to remember what it's like. Remember now, she had paid the fare. She wasn't avoiding the bus fare, and yet she was assaulted, she was arrested, she was handcuffed in front of her child. And so you need to understand what that looks like.
Right. If I didn't get on the thing, get off me! Stop! Get off me! Can you get off? Can you get off me? Can you tell him to get off? Can you get off me? Can you? You're actually hurting my arm. Can you get off me, please? I actually feel sick. No, my card is. See what I'm doing? Can you get off me? Can you get off my arm? Your card. Get off my arm! Can you get off me? Can you get off me, please? You're under arrest. He's squeezing my arm. What the hell? There's a road behind you. Stand here. Stop. Get off me. Just stand there for 1 minute. No, because he's been touching my arm for no reason.
It's important to remember she had paid the fare. She had done nothing wrong. That she was with her young son when she was arrested. It's really important to remember that, because that's my experience growing up, leaving my house, about to do a gig. I was a musician, and then being arrested just like literally meters away from my front door, and then having violence met upon you. We had the SPG vans then, so officers pushed you and shoved your head into the vans. That's an innocent woman. Now, the reason why I thought to add the clip is because the Met's Assistant Commissioner, Met Twist, has said that since this incident's happened, we've stopped our involvement in supporting Transport for London fear evasion operations. but they're going to continue and make sure their presence around if there's a violent crime. And they recognise, the police recognise that this has eroded the trust, and it was at a low bar already that our community at least had with the police. But that's not enough, because I still have this thing about the police pulling out from these extra roles to try and save money, not going to mental health. So the motivation sometimes is going to be a bit wrong, even though it might have the right effect, that they're not involved in hurting innocent people. But the reason why I had to show that clip is because I don't know if you can see the Twitter image that's on the screen underneath there. I'll try and increase the size there. But police officers came to openly support Leftwood. You heard that right. So you've seen that footage, you heard what's happened, but the Metropolitan Police put out a tweet saying that they're going to continue supporting their officers who engage in those kind of practices. She did nothing wrong. I'm going to leave that there. You are watching the Galleys Pan-African Community News Update. If you're watching us live, you're welcome to interact and with us through Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. We're coming to the end of the program. We've still got a few more stories to go through, but just a reminder, there's an election taking place on the 4th of July. We'll be back after that. So if you have any questions to do with politics, voting, that kind of sort of stuff, you're welcome to make comments or to ask, etc. But I'm going to keep moving on with the story. This is really now looking at health-related stories that have occurred over the past couple of weeks. Now, the first story is one from our brother, Granville Campbell. He's a man who lost his sibling to a rare cancer, and he hopes to inspire other men of African Caribbean heritage to seek early GP advice. And he's going to engage with this thing called the Great Manchester Run to raise awareness. Now, our brother is running his 16th race to raise money for the Christie. And this is where his elder brother, Eric, was treated for a very, very rare penile cancer before his death in October. Now, Eric was diagnosed in 2021 and given 12 months to live. And our brother, kind of like a Granville, said that he believes his brother would have received an earlier diagnosis if he'd been brave enough to seek doctor's advice in the first signs of health-related illness, and he could have potentially survived. So there's not much I can say to this other than cancer kills. But there's many therapies, many treatments. And if you treat these things early enough, they can often be dealt with. And so we have to deal with the stigma that surrounds this particular condition. And so, we give support to Granville, who's doing this run, this Great Manchester Run. And it's a good way just to raise awareness of an issue that has taken the lives of far too many, far too young. The next story is, it's a good news story, but I don't always like to link them in our positive section when they come with another edge to them. And in this particular case, you're looking at the image of our sister, Dr. Jennifer O'Connor. She's one of almost 20,000 people living in the UK with sickle cell. Now, many of you are familiar. This is a blood disorder which causes cells to sickle, which have horrendous life-threatening consequences. Now, in 2022, she was contacted by the Whitney Hospital, who told her that she'd be suitable for a new medication, which we spoke about in the last program, called Voxlotta. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Now, at the time, it was only available on a trial basis, as the pill had to be taken once a day, but it's now available at NHS for all eligible patients. And this story is just to tell you that she had lost 2 siblings to sickle cell, and she now feels that this pill has been life-changing. She says it's for the first time that she has felt she's able to live, and she uses the word normal life. Her pain medications have been significantly reduced, and there's been no acute crisis episodes. So this is an amazing achievement. Just as a reminder, like all therapies, every individual responds differently to them, but this is an amazing development for her. And again, we'll keep our eye on this particular treatment. There is no straight out cure for sickle cell. We know about bone marrow treatment. We know about the CRISPR treatment, the gene therapy. There's lots of different potential ideas, but all of them carry risks. And so this one that helps manage crisis is again a potentially good one. Yeah, I'm going to leave that there. And the last story for this section is one that, what can I say? You've probably heard it on the news all week about the crisis or the inquiry into the hepatitis C crisis, and this is about basically the infected blood scandal. This government has been involved. In fact, to be fair, the infected blood scandal isn't just this particular government. Labour governments as well as Conservative governments have all been involved in this one. But in this particular case, the daughter of Rosadine Dory, who passed away from hepatitis C, has spoken of her anger after hearing the findings. Now, she speaks about her mother who came to the UK from St. Kitts to work as a nurse and who passed away in 1997. Her daughter, Annette, who gave evidence to the inquiry, said that her mother was infected when she was given blood transfusions during childbirth. So, the inquiry has revealed the scandal could have been completely avoided. There was a pervasive cover-up to hide the truth. Deliberate attempts were made to conceal the disaster, including evidence of Whitehall officials destroying documents. Now, the ministers have earmarked around £10 billion for a compensation package for those affected. We don't know what repatriating acts are going to take place. I know that the head of the inquiry has said that it's going to monitor what takes place to make sure this can't happen again. I don't know, Sister Oleander, if you want to say anything about this, because I know that you went to the inquiry and you can explain a bit of background.
Yeah, so essentially the from civil servants to government to the NHS, they all knew that the blood that they were receiving from places like America, actually also in the UK, were coming from prisoners who had been drug addicts and needle users, who actually infected the blood that they were donating. Actually not donating, they were getting paid for it. And obviously, for people who are drug addicts, they need money to continue with their addiction. So they were selling their blood. That blood was then sent to a kind of holding center, and it was divvied out to the people that needed it, to the different hospitals. And they knew well. I mean, I'm not going to go into all of it because there's a lot to say, but essentially the blood was infected with hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and HIV, and possibly other conditions that people don't know. The really scary thing about this is that there are many, many other people out there who were affected or infected, sorry, but they may not know that they were infected. And even for those people who were infected, for some of them, thank goodness the condition wasn't too serious, but it meant that they passed that condition on to their loved ones. So that kind of goes from one person to another. And yeah, sadly, on a personal level, I know people who were infected with this awful blood as well, and who have passed away. So it is a horrible thing, and worse still for those people who were infected and those who were affected. Even though Rishi Sunak and the leader of the so-called Labour Party, Keir Starmer, even though they have said that they're gonna compensate no matter how much money it takes, actually there's a lot of caveats for that. So it's not as simple as if you were infected you will be compensated. There are certain caveats for that. So for example, people who no longer test positive for any of the conditions I've mentioned, you'll go on a kind of a tariff kind of system. So those who were affected and who are still living with the condition and who are still whatever, they will get the top amount of money, which obviously is the right thing to do. But for those people who were infected at the time and it affected them at that time, because now it's much less of an effect on their lives, they will get maybe a couple of grand, if that. So, you know, they're getting away from those people who had a serious issue with this condition back in the day. And of course, we know that they didn't deal with the people who actually made this happen, who were guilty of this,
Yeah.
which means that a lot of them have already passed away, and a lot of them who will not take responsibility for it. So I'll stop there because there's a lot I could say about it, but those are the main issues, and it was a very difficult meeting to attend. That whole day was very, very difficult.
No, thank you for sharing that. And you're right. There was so much. This distinction between infected and affected is an important one, because it doesn't really, the way the ministers have actually looked at this through a compensation lens, it minimizes the fact that if you were infected at the time, you know, there were parents who felt that they couldn't talk or touch their children, for example, because they were worried that they could infect them. You know, the trauma was out of this world, at the level that people suffered from this. We also know of stories about the blood being used on children in specific facilities deliberately to experiment on them. But we'll leave this one there, and thank you for sharing.
Sorry, that. there's one comment from FP Comms. Sister Oleander, you could be a court reporter. Tragic story and could impact any of us today. Speechless. Yes, absolutely. I'll just share one story that I spoke to one woman about. She, as an 18-month child, she sustained many injuries through boiling. I can't remember if it was boiling oil or boiling water that affected her body. More than a third of her body was burnt really badly. So they gave her blood transfusions, and when she got to 14 years old, she started getting really ill, but they couldn't work out what it was. But it's only when she was a young adult at 20 something they actually tested, and she'd been infected with hepatitis C and HIV, and that's why she was so ill. And she's still to this day living with that. She's 61 years old. So yeah, but I'll leave it there. That's enough, I think. Tragedy.
Thank you. No, it is. Okay, we're going to move on to the final part of the program now. Thank you, Sister Oleander, for sharing that. So if you do have any comments you want to share with us, please remember this is the part of the program which we call being positive. I'm going to say this straight up. It was difficult finding stories this week. I struggled. And this is over 2 weeks period. So there's a lot of things we're going through. Yeah, you are watching the Gaddi's Pan-African Community News Update. Please, if you want to interact, do so like everyone else has. You can watch us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. So I'm going to share a few stories before we sign off. Just as a reminder, we will be back after the election results. So if you have any final comments you want to make, anything related to politics or politricks involved with the election, you have that opportunity to do that now. But I'm just going to go through the stories now. And I'm going to start off with, God, I'm tongue-tied. Like I said, I struggled to find stories, but this was a positive piece of news because one of my old school friends, Margaret Greer, was elected deputy mayor of Enfield. So I know it's very kind of like it's not self-serving, but it's kind of like linked directly to me. But that's how difficult it was, right? I found that by accident. I was quite pleased to find out. I know she's been a long-time champion of working class people. She is always engaged in grassroots work, and I just wanted to say, yeah, well done, Margaret. It's strange when you know someone growing up as a young child, or as a teenager and stuff like that, and you see them actually still out there doing the work. And so we haven't caught up in a long time. Literally, we're talking about many decades, but we're hoping to do so soon. And she reminded me, when she became deputy mayor, of the amazing work that our sister Nana did when she became mayor of was it Harlesden? I can't remember the borough it was. I think it was Harlesden, but it was she was an amazing force for good. And even though she became independent after she left Labour and stuff like that, she continued being a champion for African people and working class people in the area. So yeah, that was a piece of good news I wanted to share. Sister Oleander, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And there's two comments. One from Tamala Moore. American Indians are Aboriginal people of Turtle Island. We are not related. Ashe Heka Amen Ra Aho Moore. Nation Grand Rising Karma. Rest in peace, land back.
Thank you, Tamala. That's cool. I think, I'm not sure. I mean, of course, the indigenous people of Yabayala are sovereign to themselves. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you are maybe based in America, because there's a difference in translation with the language. So what sometimes happens, the people that in the UK we might refer to as Asian or Indian are not the same as what in America they refer to as Indigenous or Aboriginal or Amerindians. So it sometimes gets lost in translation, the same way that people that we refer to come from East Asia, which may be Chinese or Japanese or Korean, the Americans refer to as Oriental. We don't use those terms. So sometimes there's a difference in translation. But in the UK, you won't hear much about Indigenous people who are kind of like original custodians of America, Yabala, because of the politics, because of the way things work. So I hope that helps clear, because I'm not sure where that came from, and I think it might be just the language choice there.
And then another comment, sorry. Brother Toyin, an upcoming memorial vigil is being held for D. John Reed at 6:30 p.m. College Road, King's Standing, Birmingham, this Friday, 31st of May.
Give
then
thanks.
It says, please support the campaign for Day John's law in relation to jury selection being reflective of the diverse UK population, especially in cases of race hate crimes.
Much appreciated for the update. In fact, what might be useful is if you can send an email to myself, Toyin@legally.org. I don't really like to share it online, but Toyin@legally.org with that, because we actually will be around in Birmingham if it's kind of like this week, this Friday. So whether we'll get there in time is another issue. But please share an email. But thank you for sharing that information. Talking about sharing information as well, there was a request for information about Nana Bonsu, and often referred to as Chief Nana Bonsu, who was a very active and respected member of the Manchester branch of the Pan-African Congress Movement, that's the PACM, and was always present at the annual African Liberation Day events throughout the UK. Now, he joined the ancestors while in Guyana some 21 years ago, but there is some information on various websites about him and the PACM, who would have known him best. So you can check that out on the nanibonsu.com website and firstcutmedia.com, which has a Nana Bonsu section. So this came from last week's, or not last week, the last broadcast program. So just giving an update on that. Next piece of good news story is actually one about Stevie Wonder, and I'm not sure if you're aware, but Stevie, did that work? Yes, it did. Was granted citizenship of Ghana by the nation's president, Nana Akufo-Addo, and this was something he just said was an amazing thing to take place. He's always had a love of the continent, in particular Ghana. He now says that he plans to engage in initiatives that will create great job opportunities for Ghanaian youth, who make up roughly 40% of the population. So, I just thought I'd share this story. It's nice to see the connections between the motherland and the diaspora. There's been many Africans in diaspora returning back, many also from the entertainment industry. A lot of this, has grown since the year of return in 2019, which encouraged many members of the African diaspora to visit and settle in Ghana. But it's nice and refreshing to see an image. In fact, if I remember correctly, that might be a clip. I'll see if yes, it is. I'll play this. It's a very short clip.
I, Stephen Morris,
swear solemnly, sincerely, to the Republic of Ghana.
The certificate of registration as a citizen of Ghana. This is it. Congratulations.
thank you so much.
For years, I've talked about being in Ghana. I started talking about it in like 1973. When I first came, the first time I felt the essence of it as if I had been here before. And I said, this is where I need to be.
By conferring Ghanaian citizenship on him, we not only recognize his immense talent and achievements, but also acknowledge his deep connection to the African continent and his tireless efforts to promote unity, solidarity, and cultural exchanges among all peoples of African descent.
My message is people, let's come together for the goodness of our culture and for the goodness of all cultures and for the goodness of the world.
And that's our amazing brother or elder, Stevie Wonder. There are some stories on YouTube and social media which tell good stories, positive stories, and negative stories. So, I mean, you have to check them out for yourself. But I think it's a positive thing that many of us are reconnecting with the motherland. And this is one of the downsides of not having an organization of African unity where we should all automatically have nationality or access to nationality when going back from the diaspora. That's a project that's still taking time to bring to fruition. I think I heard it was Tajuddin who spoke about this often, that sometimes it's much harder just getting across from one nation to another, the amount of visas needed to actually leave the continent and fly across to another country across the world. So there's some work that we still have to do.
FPcom says Stevie Wonder is my favorite artist, always been.
Musical genius. Thank you. And we're close to the end, so those of you who have anything to say, you need to say it quite quick. This is just a heads up that there's going to be a Pan-African screenwriters retreat. Now, this is actually based in the US, but I think anyone can actually apply. So if you're interested in writing screenplays, or you're writing books, novels, this sort of thing, check it out. You can go onto their website, make an application. Those who win, there'll be 4 finalists. They'll be assigned a dedicated mentor throughout the 5-day program, which will benefit from workshops and contributions by Pan-African experts across the globe. All they want from you actually to apply is a PDF version of your script. You've got to complete an application form, which is online, and submit a fee on the applications tab. The deadline is July the 18th. And so again, these are other opportunities just to connect us as a global family. The next slide and the next story is good news. I'd say, is it good news? It's good news. I like seeing us organising together, so I suppose that's always good news. This year marks the 10th anniversary of Flip Fraser's passing. Those of you know, he was an influential figure who was the brilliant creator of the Black Heroes in the Hall of Fame series. This was an amazing production, which those of you who have been lucky enough to see it will recognise its legacy, and it continues to inspire. So the Black Heroes Foundation is organising a fundraiser event on Wednesday, the 19th of June for a heartfelt celebration of Flip and to fundraise for an extraordinary play this October dedicated to his memory. So there's a campaign online. You can see it on the screen if you're interested. It's for Black Heroes. So Food Cafe, I think you can either just go to the event and you can donate that way, or you can actually make a donation if you can't make it through the two. I think they've got 2 online platforms that you can make your contributions via. And the next story is a bittersweet one. I'm trying to always keep positive on this. And I searched in my inbox for good news stories. It's one of the good things about my role and kind of like being running Legali, is that I get a heads up on a lot of things that's happening in my community, even if I don't get a chance to read them in time. Talking about that, I did miss the event that took place at the Hackney Archives. I'm gutted about that. I'm upset about that, but so we go. So this is an event I found when I was looking for it, and this is an event organised by BTWSC, or African Histories Revisited, as well as the African or Black Question, and they're presenting an African History Reflection Day in 2024, and the subtitle is "Watch This Before We Took Our Second Decade." Now, this event is taking place on Zoom only. It's on August the 31st between 6:30 and 9 p.m. And I think this might be one of the last events that they're going to be organising for a while. This year was supposed to be their sabbatical. I'm actually doing the same, but I'll talk about that later. And BTWSC, I have been blessed to be involved and to call organisers friend, and Kwaku and Sarah, all of them, everyone involved from the Mission Dying Club. They launched in 2002. And since then, they and their related organizations have done so many projects to empower and bring out the potential of young people and adults and families. All their events tend to be family orientated, especially those of African heritage, through their accredited and non-accredited courses. And they've covered topics such as African history, obviously, the music industry and event planning. A lot of the work has been involved intergenerational discussions. They've set up networking forums, community markets. This has been amazing. You name it, they've done it. Well, I know that this is, they're thinking about coming to an end and actually taking sabbaticals and time off, because one of the recent events they did, they hosted a venue, rented it, the whole lot, but they didn't get much support. People went to the event to support, but they didn't get support in the organization of the event. And I kind of empathize with that one quite greatly. So this is one of the last events for the year, I think, that they're going to be doing. So you might want to check it out. It's going to be on Zoom, like I say, August the 31st, BTWSC. And I want to just thank them. Thank Kwaku, thanks Sarah for the amazing work you've done. And I hope to see you around.
Sorry, Toyin, I think you said August 31st. On the thing, it says August 23rd.
August 23rd. I think the event is on August the 31st, but August the 23rd is a significant day for African remembrance.
Oh,
so
right. Okay, that's referring to that. Okay. Okay. So I've got a few comments.
Sure.
Where is it now? Yeah. So from FB Comms, I feel so blessed to have met and known you both. My world is better for it.
Oh, thank you.
Kisses and hugs.
Likewise.
And also she says, thank you for sharing this event. I've just spoken to Joyce and will be supporting them to promote. Please support. I believe she's talked because she posted that after you did the Soul Food Cafe. I believe that's the one she's talking about.
Okay, give thanks. And yes, everyone, please support. There's a lot of different events taking place. It's one of the downsides of not having a Legali newsletter. I mean, can you believe we used to reach 10,000 people with that newsletter? Every month I used to write that as well, on the good old days. But okay, let's move on. And the final story for this month is an event that's taking place this week on Friday. This is one that I'll be attending. It's called Undoing 2007, Preparing for 2038. And for those of you kind of like looking at the images, you'll probably pick up that this is something to do with the 2007 bicentenary. Now I'm going to be there early in the morning, kind of like having a discussion and engaging in a workshop. It's a co-productive workshop to address the state-sponsored jingoistic jamboree that took place in 2007, which has been described in a report published in 2009 as the Great Deception. Those of you in the community will know that I refer to it as the Wilberfest or the Wilberfarce. We made a documentary called Ma'arthur Truth 2007. Now, the Heritage Lottery Fund financed it. It was £20 million, and they, it was the biggest ever project of, they were the largest funder of projects relating to the bicentenary in the UK. So this event's taking place in Birmingham. So I'll be in for one day, taking part of this. And the whole mission is to prepare for the next stage of the Jamboree, which will be taking place in 2038, where the government will try another trick about its leading role in abolishing and getting rid of slavery from the world. And we need to be prepared as to not have the same mistakes committed again. I want to big up Dr. Nathaniel Tobias Coleman, who's facilitating and hosting and organizing this project. And I should say that I am going to be on a sabbatical, after the next program, actually. So, I'll give more details in the next program. And then so I normally only do this program during term time. I think the next program is going to be just outside term time, but we decided to squeeze one in just to make sure we kind of could wrap up nice and tidily. So I'm going to close as ever now with my thanks to all of you. Obviously, we want to thank our brother Colin for his research and all of those who sent stories into us. And I'm going to repeat what I said in the last program. Don't despair. If you want to help, join a Pan-Africanist organization. If you want to learn more, join a collective, read books, watch films, access conscious, offline, online media. There's many places online. There's a School of Pan-Africanism Thought. You can start your own organization if you can't find one where you're around. And don't forget that we have many community journalists and presenters doing some great work in the mainstream media, so try and support them. And remember, this is your program. And, always try to cover issues that are of interest to you. Sister Oleander, I don't know if you want to say anything before we wrap up.
Yes, so I'm hoping that all of you take your time and have a good extended weekend, because I know tomorrow is Bank Holiday Monday, with the normal bank holiday weather, no doubt. But aside from that, walk good, everybody. And I hope that you enjoy the summer as it's coming. And take your time to do some good things. Let's share the good news, spread the news about all those different Pan-African organizations that are out there, and share this as well with any friends that you have who might get something out of it. But apart from that, there's just two quick comments. Well, FP Comms is just giving us a round of applause, and N says Asante Sana for yet another blockbuster broadcast. I haven't heard that word for a long time. I appreciate all the research undertaken. Give thanks to you.
Thanks as well. And thank you all for being with us, accompanying us. It's very difficult doing this without anyone out there. So when you send comments and let us know you can hear us okay and share information, it really means the world to us. We are in a difficult time in the UK. Afrophobia is on the rise. The media's not covering us. We are completely unprotected politically. There's no political party now in this country that has our back. There's an election taking place, like I said, in 6 weeks' time. None of them offer anything to help us. We might have a few politicians who are kind-hearted and kind of do their best to support us, but even they are threatened if they speak out on issues that are of interest to us. Now, we will be back on Sunday, the 9th of June. We keep trying to aim for the 6 p.m. slot, but it's probably going to be 7 p.m. It takes so long to put the program together. I'm normally exhausted by the time we reach air. You won't believe it. But that will be the last session for the term, I suggested it possibly could be for the year. As I'll be on a sabbatical, I might be able to do them during the sabbatical, but I can't promise. But we'll discuss that on the Sunday.
So Toyin, can I just say a great big thank you to you too, because of, without all your hard work and support for African people globally, I don't know, information, your love, your support, all of those things just wouldn't be out there. So thank you.
Oh, maybe blush. It goes to you as well. You know that this is going to sound like a love-in now, but yes, of course, and thank you for having my back and supporting. You're going to make me. I can't do this mushy stuff, man. Oh God, now see, now I'm blushing. Look, that's it. We're done. We're finished. Thank you, everyone. Give thanks, and as ever, may the ancestors continue to guide and protect us. Ashe.
Ashe.